Hello and welcome back to the deep dive. We are getting properly stuck into something today that, on the face of it, it sounds like a bit of boring logistics,
Hmm.
train timetables, bus fares, that sort of thing. But once you peel back the layers, you realize it's actually a massive cultural shift that is completely rewriting the university experience in the UK.
It really is.
We're talking about the rise of the commuter student.
It's a fascinating area, and I think
hmm
I think we need to smash a stereotype right off the bat. When people think university, they still think of the movies,
Oh, yeah.
packing up the car, waving goodbye to mom and dad, and moving into halls of residence for 3 years of partying and, well, occasionally studying.
Yeah, the classic coming of age moment, the messy kitchen, the traffic cone in the hallway, the whole lot. But the data we've got today tells a very, very different story, doesn't it?
It certainly does. We're looking at sources from, well, all over. BBC reports, student blogs from places like UCL, to some pretty heavy policy documents from the University of Kent, and academic research on transport equity.
And the headline stat is just mad.
It's startling. Across the UK, over 40% of students now live at home, either their parents' home or their own home, during term time.
40%, that's huge. I mean, it's almost half the student population. And in some places, it's even higher. I was reading the data from Canterbury Christchurch University, and their commuter population hits 63%.
63. Aye. So it's the majority. And that's why our mission today is to really unpack this, because being a commuter student isn't just about catching a bus. It's a distinct identity.
Right.
It comes with a specific set of barriers, what researchers are calling transport exclusion, and of course some undeniable financial incentives.
So the plan is to look at the money, the brutal reality of the daily commute, the sort of invisible nature of these students in the eyes of the system, and maybe finish up with a bit of a survival guide for anyone living this life.
Sounds like a solid plan.
Right then, let's start with the wallet. Because let's be honest, nobody chooses to spend 3 hours a day on a train just for the scenery.
Especially not with British Rail being what it is.
Exactly. This is about survival, isn't it?
Entirely.
Yeah.
The financial drivers here are just stark. We looked at a case study of a student called Amelka, a biology student at the University of Manchester. She was featured in a BBC report,
Okay.
and she sat down and did the maths before she started. If she had moved into halls and paid for, typical student living costs, she was looking at a bill of over £13,000 a year.
13 grand. And that's before you've even bought a pint or a textbook. That is just eye-watering.
It is. And to give you a bit of context here, something to really anchor this, the Higher Education Policy Institute, or HEPI, they released figures on what a minimum socially acceptable standard of living actually costs for a 3-year degree.
Go on then, give us the bad news.
£61,000.
You're joking. 61 grand for 3 years. That's basically a mortgage deposit in most of the North.
That's a terrifying figure. And that's for a minimum standard, not luxury. So when you look at Amelka's choice, it just becomes a completely rational economic decision.
It's a no-brainer.
Aye. By staying at her mum's house in Horwich and commuting into Manchester, she saves about £7,000 a year on rent alone. Even with, say, 700 quid spent on transport, the balance sheet is undeniably in her favor.
It really is. Saving 7 grand is life-changing money for a student. But looking through the blogs from UCL, it wasn't just about the cash. There's this phrase that kept popping up, life commitments.
And that's a crucial distinction. We often assume commuter just means an 18-year-old trying to save a few quid. But a huge chunk of this demographic are mature students.
Which in university speak just means anyone aged 21 or over.
Right.
Which feels a bit cheeky calling a 21-year-old mature, doesn't it? I still felt like a kid at 21.
Well, in the eyes of the admissions office, you're a veteran. But these students often have established lives. They might be carers for elderly parents. They could have children of their own.
Or a mortgage.
Or a mortgage, or a decent part-time job that they simply can't afford to quit to move to another city. You can't just uproot your whole life to go live in a single bed in halls.
And there's an emotional angle, too, isn't there? I saw Lauren Sandu writing for UCL. She made a really good point about support networks. If you stay at home, you keep your safety net. Halls can be a laugh, but they can also be incredibly isolating if you don't click with your flatmates,
That's very true. Halls are often chaotic. There's an inherent instability to them. Fire alarms at 3 a.m., parties next door.
Well,
Staying at home offers a consistent environment. However, and this is the crux of the problem, really, you are trading one cost for another.
you save money.
We pay in time.
Oh, the time. Reading these accounts of the actual daily grind, it properly stressed me out. It's not just hopping on a tube, it's an expedition.
It's a logistical marathon. Let's go back to Amelka's routine in Manchester. She doesn't just, teleport to the lecture theater. She leaves her house at 7 a.m. She walks 25 minutes to the station, often in the freezing cold and rain.
Yeah.
Then a 25-minute train. Then another 30-minute walk to her lecture.
That's nearly an hour of walking. I mean, she said it was good for her step count, 15,000 steps a day, which is great for fitness, but doing that with a massive bag full of library books and a wet umbrella, that is a proper shift before you've even opened a book.
And that's just one way. That's 3 hours of travel every single day.
Yeah.
We also looked at Tonica, a psychology student at UCL. She commutes from South London on the Northern Line. If you've ever been on the Northern Line at rush hour.
Oh, it's a nightmare. You're basically sharing a jumper with a complete stranger. It's hot, it's loud, everyone's grumpy. And this brings up a massive debate in the literature we looked at, doesn't it? Is this time wasted, or can you actually use it?
This is what some researchers call the dead time paradox. It's a real double-edged sword. On one hand, you have students like Tonica who try to reclaim that time. She mentions doing her reading or revising notes on the tube.
Right.
If you can get a seat, it acts as a sort of forced study period. You can't go to the fridge, you can't turn on the telly, you might as well read.
But that's a massive if, getting a seat. You've got more chance of winning a lottery than getting a seat on the Northern Line at 8 in the morning.
Precisely. And the other side of the paradox is something called cognitive load. Commuting isn't passive. You're constantly monitoring. Is the train late? Which platform is it? Is that person going to sneeze on me? Do I need to change lines?
Yeah.
That low-level anxiety drains the mental energy you actually need for learning.
That is such a good point. You arrive at a 9 a.m. lecture already mentally tired. One of the sources said something that really stuck with me. If you struggled to get to school on time when you were a teenager, you are really going to struggle commuting to uni. It requires military discipline.
It does. And that's before we even discuss the unpredictability. Train strikes, cancellations, signal failures. Amelka mentioned times where her train just didn't show up for 2 hours.
Oh, no.
Imagine standing on a platform, freezing, knowing you're missing a mandatory practical session. The stress levels must be off the charts.
And that stress isn't just a personal problem, is it? It's a systemic one. And this is where the research gets really interesting. The idea of the invisible student.
This is probably the most significant takeaway for me. For decades, the entire higher education system has been designed around the residential model. It just assumes you live 10 minutes away.
Right.
It assumes you can pop to the library at 8 o'clock at night.
And if you don't fit that model, you're just awkward. You're an inconvenience to the timetable.
Worse than awkward, you're officially at risk. The Office for Students, the regulator in England, has actually added commuter students to their Equality of Opportunity Risk Register.
That sounds incredibly official. What does that actually mean?
It means the regulators have finally admitted that being a commuter is a risk factor for dropping out or underachieving. Dr. Susan Kenyon from Canterbury Christ Church University has written a lot on this. She talks about transport-related social exclusion.
Can we break that down a bit? Social exclusion sounds a bit academic.
Well, think of it this way, timetabling. A university might schedule a lecture at 9 a.m. and then a seminar at 4 p.m.
Right.
If you live on campus, you go back to your room in between, have a nap, make a sandwich. If you're a commuter, you're stranded. You have a 6-hour gap with nowhere to go.
Amelka described it as wandering the streets. That's just heartbreaking, isn't it? You don't have a base. You're essentially homeless for 6 hours.
Exactly. And what happens if that 4 o'clock seminar is moved to 5? You might miss the last reasonable train home. Or what if the 9 a.m. lecture is canceled last minute? You've traveled 2 hours for absolutely nothing.
The system isn't built to value your time.
Not at all. And there's a metric they use, isn't there, as the crow flies? Which is ridiculous unless you happen to have wings.
Yeah, that's mad.
Aye. Unis often measure accessibility by distance. Oh, you only live 10 miles away, that's local. But as Dr. Kenyon points out, accessibility is about time and cost, not miles. 10 miles in a rural area with 1 bus a day might take longer than 50 miles on a high-speed train.
But the policy just ignores that nuance.
Often, yes.
And then there's the FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
We can't ignore the social side. University isn't just about books, it's about making friends, isn't it?
And this is where the exclusion hits hard. Amelka was very honest about this. She said the social life at uni is heavily skewed towards clubs, bars, late nights.
Yeah.
If you have a 90-minute commute to get home, You just cannot stay out until 2 in the morning.
No, absolutely not. She said it's not safe for me to do that commute in the middle of the night. And she's right. Getting a night bus and walking home alone at 3 a.m., not happening.
So you miss out.
You miss out. You aren't there when the in-jokes are made in the flat kitchen at midnight.
It creates a two-tier system, really. The residential experience and the commuter experience. For a long time, the commuter version was treated as second class. But, and here's the good news, universities are waking up.
Because they have to.
Because they have to. They're realizing these students are, customers with very specific needs.
So let's talk solutions. How are unis fixing this? Because some of these ideas are brilliant. The commuter lounge seems to be the big one.
It's a game changer. The University of Manchester has opened a dedicated lounge. Crucially, it opens at 8 in the morning.
Which matters, right? If your train gets you in at 10 past 8, but your lecture is until 9, you need somewhere to go that isn't a damp park bench.
Exactly. They call it a place to land. But look at what they put in there. Kitchens, study pods, lockers. So you aren't lugging that heavy gym kit around all day. And perhaps most importantly, showers.
The showers are such a big deal. If you've walked 15,000 steps or cycled or just been on a sweaty tube, you want to freshen up before you sit in a seminar. It's about dignity, isn't it?
It is.
You don't want to be the smelly one in the corner.
It's about making the campus feel like a home base. The University of Kent is doing something similar. They've focused on the food aspect. They've installed hot taps for boiling water and microwaves in social zones.
That sounds like a small detail, but if you're commuting to save money, you don't want to be spending £5 on a meal deal every single day. Being able to bring your own leftovers and heat them up, that saves you hundreds over a year.
It does.
Yeah.
But Kent has another innovation that I think is genuinely forward-thinking. Occasional accommodation.
I loved this. Tyler Court, right.
It's the one. They offer en-suite rooms specifically for commuters who need to stay over on an ad hoc basis.
That is so smart. So if you have a massive exam the next morning and you're terrified of train delays, or there's a big society ball that finishes late, you can just book a room for that one night.
Exactly. It removes the anxiety. You don't have to choose between your grades and your commute. It bridges the gap between the two worlds.
And they're looking at tech, too.
Yes, laptop loans. Again, simple but effective. Why haul a heavy laptop on the train every day if you can just check one out when you arrive? And on a deeper level, timetabling is slowly shifting. Some universities are trying to cluster lectures.
So instead of spreading them out over 5 days, you might have 2 days where you're in back-to-back from 9 to 5.
Precisely. It makes the journey worth it. If you're traveling 2 hours for a 1-hour lecture, you resent it. If you're traveling for a full day of content, it feels like a job. It makes sense.
It really feels like they're moving towards treating commuters as a valid part of the ecosystem rather than just an inconvenience. So for anyone listening who is doing this commute or thinking about it, we've pulled together a survival guide from our sources. What are the top tactics?
Let's break it down. Finance, social, and travel. On finance, you have to be brutal. You're doing this to save money, so don't leak cash on the journey.
Rail cards are non-negotiable. Amelka bought a 3-year 1625 rail card up front. That's a top tip. Buy the 3-year one so you locked in the price and don't forget to renew it. And if you're in London, get the 18-plus student Oyster card. It cuts the cost down significantly.
And track your latte factor. It's very easy to think, oh, I'm saving $7,000 on rent, and then spend £10 a day on station coffee and snacks.
Use the microwave. Use the hot tap.
Exactly.
What about the social side? Because that feels like the hardest nut to crack.
The advice from Tonica at UCL is excellent, though it does sound exhausting. Go hard in the first term.
Yeah, she basically said attend every freshers event you can, even if you are dead on your feet.
It's about investment. If you build those connections in the first 4 weeks, you have a social base. You have people to text to say, I'm on campus, want a coffee, later in the year. If you simply commute in, go to class, and leave, you will remain invisible.
And Amelka mentioned commuter networks. I didn't even realize these were a thing, but she joined a group chat specifically for commuters and made like 40 friends instantly.
It makes perfect sense. You have an instant shared struggle. Trauma bonding, if you like.
Yeah.
You can moan about the Northern Rail service together. Shared adversity is a powerful social glue.
The 08.15 is canceled again. I know, nightmare. Best friends for life.
Exactly. And finally, the travel hacks, the really practical stuff.
The empty carriage technique.
Learn where the train stops. Walk to the far end of the platform. It's almost always quieter. And have a wee bit of patience. The advice was, if the first bus or tube is packed like a sardine tin, Just let it go.
Yeah.
Wait 3 minutes for the next one. A slightly calmer journey is worth being 3 minutes late.
And use the time to decompress. If you can't work because it's too busy, don't force it. Listen to a podcast like this one.
Indeed. Reclaim the time. Don't let it just be dead time.
So as we wrap up, what's the big takeaway here? Because it feels like the university model is at a bit of a crossroads.
It is. The summary is that commuting is a valid, financially savvy, and increasingly common way to get a degree. It's not a lesser experience, but it is a different one. It requires more discipline, more planning, and frankly, more grit.
And the stigma is fading, you think?
I think so. It's just a reality for too many people now to be stigmatized. But I do want to leave the listener with a somewhat provocative thought.
Go on.
Currently, in higher education data, relocation, that is, moving away from home, is a statistical predictor of success. If you move, you're more likely to get a first-class degree.
Which feels fundamentally unfair.
It is. It suggests the system is rigged towards those who can afford to move. So, here's the question. Does the traditional residential university model need to die out to make education truly equal? Are we moving toward a future where campus life, the bubble, the halls, the parties, is actually a luxury product for the wealthy, while the majority simply commute like it's a 9-to-5 job?
That is a heavy thought. Is the uni experience becoming a luxury item, something to mull over on your next train journey?
Indeed.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this deep dive. Thanks for listening. Hope you found it useful. Catch you on the next one. Ta-ra.